regardless of where you come from, what your background is, making a living out of doing something creative is very difficult. Always has been, always will be. So to actually get a foot in and get away and start making a living out of doing something creative was a dream come true. First album sleeve I ever did was for a rap band from Manchester called the Ruthless Rap Assassins, who I went on to do quite a lot of stuff with. And that's, funnily enough, how I ended up working with The Verve, because I was at a party in Wigan in the late 80s. And I was talking to this lad, and he looked like he had long hair, a big floppy hat on his head, and I wouldn't normally, he didn't look anything like me. But we got chatting, and I found him quite interesting. And it transpires that was Richard Ashcroft. And he knew I was doing these record sleeves for this mad black rap band from Manchester, and he was fascinated because he knew that I'd set out specifically to do this. And his point was, most lads want to be DJs or footballers or rock stars, but you wanted to be a sleeve designer. That's really odd, yeah. Anyway, I never saw him again for another 3 years, and I bumped into him at 6 o'clock in the morning on a petrol station when I was going for a pint of milk. This is a true story, this. And the first petrol station I went to, I didn't have any milk, so I had to go another mile to get some milk. And I said, no, and he's like, yeah, that sleeve designer guy. And they'd just been signed by Virgin Records, because they weren't even in the band back then. He says, well, you've got the gig if you want to do it. And that's how I got to work with The Verve. I specifically set out to design record sleeves. So then to go on and work with the biggest bands, certainly in the country, if not the world, was just out of this world. You know, I mean, like The Verve and Oasis were the biggest bands in this country. I was working with them both at the same time. As well as tons of other bands as well. That was a single sleeve, and the single's called She's a Superstar, and this was all done pre-Photoshop. No, I'm sure Photoshop existed then, this was 1992, but I couldn't afford a computer. And I had these visions in my head, so well, how am I going to do this without being able to digitally enhance these photographs? Because again, this was all shot on film. But we wanted to get this really electric blue water, so in the end I'm stood about a mile upstream, half a mile upstream, and I had a dustbin of blue food colouring, and we literally dyed the river blue. And that was like that all along the way, like that Be Here Now one with the Rolls Royce in the swimming pool for Oasis. People presume that's photoshopped in, but it's not, because I think it looks too small, the car on this. If I'd have photoshopped it, I'd have made the car bigger. I'm always interested in finding new things to photograph, and I love music, obviously. And a friend of mine, Glenn Atkins, who runs a soul night in Wigan, suggested that I go to a place called Highfield Soul Club, which was run by a group of guys called the Wigan Young Souls. And the unique thing about this setup was they were all about 17. So I went along, and it all just started from there, really. Well, I think you have to be a fly on the wall, because it's such an incestuous scene. And if you start bowling in there, you know, cameras going off left, right, and people go, who the hell's this? You know what I mean? So I've been experimenting with off-camera flash for a bit of a while, and I thought in this sort of scene it would work perfectly. So I went along with a friend of mine, and he was going to be my lighting guy, so I've got me transmitter on the camera, and he's going to work at sort of a 90-degree angle to me. But we'd literally got there, and his wife, who was pregnant, rang up and had a puncture, so he had to disappear. And I had to literally just put the flash on the floor and work around the room on my own, so that style was a complete accident. Doing still shots and having movement in them is very difficult to do. And this effect was achieved by, it's flashed obviously, but there's a light bulb on in the room as well. So, but the flash goes off, freezes it, and then he's moving around still dancing. And the shutter's open for 2 seconds, and the light bulb illuminating peaks off these bits here and gives that movement effect. Because a lot of people think all this is done in Photoshop, but it's not. That's straight out the camera, that. Slightly, I've adjusted the contrast thereafter, but that's about it. That is as it was shot, pretty much. I mean, the stuff I normally do is black and white. Obviously, this is colour to show off the clothes, but it's all very sort of chiaroscuro, very, very contrasted, deep black stuff, because that's what it looks like when you're in there, you know. It's a wonderful thing to photograph if you get it right, you know, because it's an amazing scene. It really is. These people are so passionate and dedicated, and these people are obsessive. They go week in, week out, all over the country, travel hundreds of miles. A lot of times to listen to the same records, it must be said, but it hasn't really changed at all since it first started. That's a unique thing. I can't think of anything else that's like it, really.